Talk to us about, as I'm looking at volumes going thin in terms of the NASDAQ, the S&P were down by about 0.25% from usual volumes. Is that sort of the same scenario playing out in crypto?
Yeah, so I would say in the last 24 hours, we've actually seen far more activity than in the previous week with active overnight trading, Bitcoin nearing that 50K mark, ETH around 4K, and also just notably layer one. So Luna hitting an all-time high breakpoint around that $100 mark. So we're seeing Bitcoin crossing the desk 5 times more than ETH, and really, aggressive personas around hedge funds and prop shops across our institutional client base.
Talk to us about the altcoins, Luna, Solana, all these. How much of your world, the institutional world, are they diversifying outside of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and going into DeFi more in and of itself?
I would say a majority of our institutional clients today no longer just hold Bitcoin and Ethereum. That was a narrative that 8 months ago very much stood strong. But at this point, I would say the narrative is much more around multi-chain thesis. And so folks are looking at other chains that have P ratios, that have adoption. NFTs were mentioned, as well as gaming. And so, thinking through these different applications that have adoption and user numbers to measure against.
And therefore, as we unfold into 2022, is it the current institutional players will just go deeper, will go bigger, will get further amounts in terms of allocation towards that sort of space? Or are you looking for far more players to come on in?
I think at this point, the biggest narrative right now is really thinking about diversification against inflation. So if you look at just the US dollar, roughly 40% of US dollars that ever entered circulation has been printed since the beginning of 2020. And so, with that, investors have very top of mind, how do I diversify against that? And some of the uncertainty going into Q1 of next year and Q2. And so to your point, 100%, I think we've seen our institutional client base grow to over 700 institutional clients today. And we're seeing just the types of institutions that we're speaking to grow larger and far more comprehensive and greater across personas and across geographies.
But as of late, Bitcoin, for another one to focus on, just seems to trade like a risk asset. It doesn't seem to be moving so much on where inflation is printing at or consumer confidence therein. It is much more to do with where the risk on or risk off is. How do you square that circle as to what it really acts like as a ballast and as a diversifier?
Yeah, I would say, today the asset class is getting more institutional. So we will see it likely trade more like risk on and risk off. Now, that said, I think that's why you're seeing more of this diversification into other alternative coins. And so, even if you look at just Bitcoin through end of year, this is just a testament to how institutional the space is getting. But, Bitcoin's still up over 60% year over year, and Ethereum up over 400%. And that dominance across both of them sliding down into the year. So again, going into that both multi-chain and alternative investment thesis.
What are some of the other new DeFi or new projects that people are getting excited about that we're not so used to using in our lexicon? I mean, at the moment, it's amazing if you get people to talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum. You're all going much more deeply already into Luna. Of course, our audience is a technology-focused one. But where are some of the more exciting projects coming from globally?
I would say this is the first year where we've seen decoupling away from Bitcoin prices across other crypto assets. And what I mean by that is if you look at NFTs or gaming, this is the first time where a user can enter that space and may never have purchased Bitcoin before. And so you're seeing other tokens that are trading not directly correlated to Bitcoin and even Ethereum, which is really, really exciting. I think this is where mainstream adoption is going to happen. And you've seen a lot of that context, whether it's NFTs, Sotheby's, Christie's, and the volumes in terms of how much they've been processing this year, or even OpenSea as well. In addition to all of the companies that have entered the metaverse and partnering to access this net new marketplace and space.
And from your perspective, I mean, as a female in this space as well, is diversity within, not just diversification of assets, but diversity of people within the space? I think of, in particular, NFTs, some hand-wringing about basically how many of the main artists are white guys. How is that proving out? And will we see more optimism there, do you think?
Absolutely. I would say it is incredibly top of mind for every company in this space to diversify. And so, I have seen a number of organizations that are actively working on partnering in order to make sure that happens, in order to make sure that we are constantly hiring a more diverse group of folks to enter the space, and just providing those opportunities and education in order to make this accessible to everyone as well.